You're listening to Real Investor Radio with Craig Fuhr and Jack Bevere, where we cover advanced real estate investing topics to help you stay ahead of the curve in your real estate investing business. Hey, welcome everyone to Real Investor Radio. I'm Craig Fuhr, joined by the ever awesome Jack Bevere. Jack, how are you today?
Good morning, man. Great to see you. Great to see you.
Jack, I just want to do a couple quick takes today on some stuff. So you sent me a couple days ago an update. You're a member of the National Rental Home Council. This is a body of sort of larger investors of single family, and I would assume multifamily as well.
It's really just the single family. Multifamily's got their own trade organization. Maybe 6-7 years ago, the National Rental Home Council was formed by, as you mentioned, the largest single family rental owners. Think Invitation Homes, American Homes for Rent, guys like that. There really wasn't a trade organization for them. And they've been getting a lot of attention, and as a result, felt that they needed a trade organization for advocacy and organization.
Sure.
And so it's a pretty well-funded group, and they're paying attention to legislative issues on both the national and state levels.
Mm-hmm.
And they have they're starting to work their way down. They started a couple local chapters recently. I think there's one in Atlanta, another one in Arizona. And so they're starting to open up more local chapters and kind of come down to Main Street.
Sure.
But the work that they're doing is, focused on anything that smaller landlords would be, affected by as well. So we're a member of NRHC. We're probably one of the smaller members there. Mm-hmm. But I've been paying attention to their legislative work, and so they put out a kind of a update on what's been going on around the country.
Yeah, it's pretty. The email that you sent was great because it kind of bullet points state by state some of the more pressing issues that I guess members of the body could be experiencing or are perhaps experiencing in their businesses, Jack. And as you mentioned, the members of that organization are some of the largest, sort of institutional and I guess non-institutional single family owners in the country. And so, let's tackle the first, appears to be two major themes to their last legislative update, Jack. And the first of which is squatters. And so, I don't know when this became such a, top shelf issue in America, but it seems like every day now I'm hearing stories about, this state, that state having problems with squatters. And so Georgia, Arizona, and Texas legislators are all trying to pass bills right now to protect homeowners against squatters, Jack. And prior to the show today, I was able to pick up a couple stories. I'll just read a couple here, a couple paragraphs here real quick from USA Today, very recent article. In Texas, a homeowner says she was locked out of her house by a squatter who claimed to have a lease after moving to the state with her family. The woman had already been evicted from 3 prior homes, Jack. In Maryland, where we are, a woman returned from vacation to find 2 squatters in her bed. They were not only living in her house, Jack, but also sold about $50,000 of her furniture. It's a lot of furniture. So, obviously, Jack, this is becoming a front and center issue. I think that it's only going to get worse. And so, the NHRC highlighted what some states are doing to legislate, I guess, to protect homeowners in America.
Yeah. I've seen, I think there's like I don't know if it's on YouTube or on HGTV or something, but there's like this show now that has that features this company or spotlights this company that will like get squatters out for you. So you can call them and their job is to go deal with a squatter situation. And they'll it's
like people exterminators, Jack. It's like,
yeah.
Orkin is going to start a new subsidiary just for squatters, Jack.
Like you can imagine, that's like phenomenal TV, right? Like seeing somebody kick somebody else out of a house, and these guys are like aggressive, no fear. Like that is a dangerous job, right?
Oh yeah.
I've also heard like here locally in Maryland that there's a small company that's come up that you can hire them and they will send someone and they will move into the house with a lease. So you sign a lease with that person. You have a squatter in your house. Mm-hmm. You sign a lease with this other person. They get inside and they're like, hey, you live here? I live here too. Here's my lease. And they just live with the freaking squatter. until that squatter is just like, hey, this isn't what I signed up for, and like moves out. I'm like, dude, that is freaking aggressive. Like that, in certain locations, like that is a ballsy business model. I'm sure it's quite lucrative for them, but man, you're really going, looking in the whites of the eyes there of someone who's, a criminal who's broken into your house. Like,
I think the primary concern here, Jack, is that there's this notion that there's squatters' rights, or sort of what's the other term, where if somebody lives in a house for like say 10 years, adverse possession, I believe it is, Jack. Mm-hmm. And so what the NRHC council was highlighting was, like in Georgia, for instance, it's there's this process, Jack, and you know better than most about the process of eviction. However, for some reason, these people who don't pay anything live in your house for free. You would think it would be a fairly easy process. Call the police, get them out. But evidently in some states they're not. So for instance, in Georgia, they're actually trying to pass a law, Jack, HB 1017, to provide a more efficient and streamlined path for property owners to remove. I just don't frankly understand the world we live in sometimes, Jack, where these folks have rights and I just can't open my door and say, get the F out, So that's Georgia.
Our experience has been that we'll go to a house, house is on the market, staged. Like that's like a concern about staging now, right? Like you're just furnishing it for the squatters, right? Like
I have the greatest story ever, Jack. Can I share?
Hit me, yeah.
So for those of listening who don't know, I used to rehab and flip houses in Baltimore back in the early to mid 2000s, and did quite a few sort of in the outer edges of Baltimore City and some of the, like, larger single family detached houses. And so we would go into these big houses, kind of make them brand new again. And I would do these Taj Mahal rehabs. Remember, Jack? I mean, they were really upscale. Fred taught me the business of making houses really nice. Jack's partner at Dominion. And so I'm up in this little where I grew up, which is Parkville, Maryland. I'm doing a house right off of Harford Road at Jack, and the house is done, staged, gorgeous, and on the market. And at the time, I was also coaching people on how to do the same. And so I was taking one of my coaching students into this house, Jack, walk up the front steps. We can see in the front door because there's a window in it. And I literally see like a shadow run across the house. And the house was actually owned by a funeral home that was right next door at the time. So, and Jack, I get the hair stand up on the back of my neck. And I'm thinking, like, what in the hell did I just see? So we then go around the back, and there's a girl who comes bolting out the back door. And what we discovered was, and I tackle her to the ground.
Are you serious?
Tackle her to the ground. And I'm holding her down, and I'm like, what in the hell are you doing in my house? The student who I was with, who I was teaching at the time, called 911. The police were there like within minutes. And the girl's on the ground, and the cop rolls up, and she goes, "Oh, Teresa, what are you doing?" Knew this person by name.
You're kidding me.
And says, "Sir, we have it from here. We'll take it." And I was like, did you want to press charges? I was like, just get her out of my house. She broke a window, got in, and was a prostitute using my house, Jack, as her place of residence to entertain guests. And when I tell you the trash that was about the house that comes as a result of that transaction, used all the towels, that were there for staging. And so I've got to believe, with all the transactions you've done, Jack, that you've seen, squatters, folks, being in your houses. So there's got to be a great story amongst all of your years of doing this.
You know how like flippers sometimes they'll name their rehabs.
Yeah,
you should call that one the Bunny Ranch. That should be the name.
Yeah, so that was interesting,
man.
No amusing anecdotes, Jack, from all your years of doing houses.
I mean, a lot of just like I've had lots of those experiences, and it's crazy because like the fact pattern can go either way based off of like, we'll go there, we'll be like, hey, get out of my house. Cops are already on the way. Sometimes people are just like, whoops, and they just like, they don't want the attention and they're gone. They're on their way out. Other folks will have these like, be like, no, like I signed this lease, and sometimes it's sincere, right? Like there was a period of time, maybe 6-7 years ago, where there was like a string in Baltimore of scammers who are doing this and actually taking people, right? Like where the squatter was actually a victim who actually believed that they had signed a lease, they handed
with a
over.
legit landlord. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, they responded to some Craigslist ad, and
Yep.
like they had bad credit or an eviction on their history, so they were like happy to like give somebody $1,000 and get a set of keys, but they didn't actually know that they were squatting. And so we've had that situation, and sometimes those folks just have left because they didn't want the trouble, and other times they're like, hey, I signed a lease here, and the cops are like, you're going to have to take it to court, and that person's willing to wait to get evicted.
Oh,
And
you
then
know
other
what you
situations
go
we've
ahead.
had where, and then other situations we've had where, it's obviously a scammer. It's a bullshit lease. It's like a page, like, nothing filled out, like, scribble on the landlord, under the landlord name. And and then it comes down to what the cops like. Do the cops believe them or not? Right.
Sure.
And does that particular cop like care enough to like take the risk, I guess, personally, that he's making the right judgment call?
Right.
And some of them just are just like, they just completely punt to the court system. Others are just like, no, get the hell out. Right. And so it's very like cop dependent, frankly,
Sure.
in terms of your success rate on getting squatters out. So we've like one that was like obviously bullshit. We've called the cops. They've showed up and said, hey, yeah, you're going to have to take this to court. And then the next day we come back again on a different shift, call the cops again, get a different cop because it's a different shift. And that person gets kicked out of the house because that cop was just, that individual was more, was less tolerant of, punting to the court system for eventual justice.
Yeah.
Which
So
right now is like 4 months. Like for us to get an eviction, I don't get a court date for 60 days.
Well,
so like,
let me just stop you there. So obviously squatting is becoming a bigger issue, front and center issue in, Georgia. There was another update from Arizona getting ready to pass a bill against squatters, as well as Texas, which comes as really no surprise when you think about the number of, essentially homeless people that are flooding, over those borders right now looking for a place to stay. One of the things, Jack, you walked into my office a few weeks ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, and you were like, you want to blow your lid about something? Which is always one of my favorite things. And you were talking about a new eviction update here in Baltimore, which frankly, look, if one state passes it or one locale passes it, you can rest assured that other legislatures are thinking about it. So it doesn't matter where you're listening, who is from right now. This is an update that I think you should know, Jack. And you mentioned that now, so go ahead and tell us what was it, Baltimore or the whole state, Jack, that was
whole state of
considering this?
Maryland, yeah, which is why it's concerning for listeners wherever you are, because yeah, as you mentioned, like as soon as one state sets the precedent, other similarly colored states like to follow suit and use that as, hey, this isn't a crazy idea. Look, they've already done it here.
Right.
And so Maryland unfortunately paved the road for a new legislation where they introduced an additional surcharge for a failure to pay rent action, which is what we call rent court. And so it's an additional surcharge of what's the number, $48.
I thought you mentioned it was something like $48.
Yeah. And it's non-recover. The issue is, that surcharge is paid by the landlord and it is non-recoverable to the tenant, except through the security deposit, which basically means non-recoverable, right?
So let's break it down for folks. Tenant refuses to pay or doesn't pay for 1 month, 2 months. You take them to rent court. What was it in the past, Jack? You had to pay a fee for the rent court.
Yeah, $8.
$8 to file a claim in rent court. And so you didn't care whether the $8 was recoverable or not. You would get your day in court, get it adjudicated. But now you're saying that it's a $48.
No. In addition, so it's still $8, but now it's an additional $48. Now that $8 was recoverable to the tenant. You could put it on their ledger, and when they gave you money, you could say, hey, part of that money went to paying that court cost.
I see.
Now there's a supplemental $48 surcharge, which is not recoverable to the tenant. So one, it's really annoying from a bookkeeping point of view, right? Because you have to like track what stuff is recoverable versus non-recoverable.
Yeah.
And so as a result, it's a $48 tax on the landlord for using the court system as a collections mechanism, right?
Right.
And so for those folks who are habitual late payers, that fee is essentially a decrease in rent, right? Like you're just taking $50 less. You're getting $50 less in rent because you have to pay $50 every time you want to take someone to rent court. And so I think landlords are going to be a lot less tolerant of late payers. In Maryland, we've got this feature in the law where it's called a no right of redemption, where after 4 times, if someone pays late within a 12-month period 4 times or more, on the 5th time, you can say, hey, they can pay or not, but they're gone. Like they don't get to pay to stay after the 4th time. And I think, ironically, that's what's going to end up happening is that landlords are going to use that feature of the law on a more regular basis. And I think that, this is, in my opinion, this is one of those like well-intentioned, but like but like legislators or, politicians who don't understand the economic trickle down effects of things. They're hurting the people they're intending to protect. So in the past, like for example, in the past, we tenants could pay rent late, and landlords, the custom was to, you take them to rent court and you get your judgment, but they eventually pay. And you have people who are, habitually in rent court. And it takes 4 months to get an eviction date. And so from the tenant's perspective, just use easy math here. Say the rent's $1,000.
Yeah.
From the tenant's perspective, they can borrow that $1,000 for 4 months, and it costs them a 5% late fee plus $8. And so it's cheaper than a payday loan, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like a credit card. The landlord's providing the tenant a 4-month credit card, a $4,000 credit card for $8 plus 5%. So it's an expensive credit card, but hey, credit cards are expensive. And with this change in the law, landlords are now not going to be willing to do that. They're not going to be willing to extend credit because it costs them $50 to extend credit.
Do you have any idea what what sort of the national average is for late pay? Because
I don't.
No,
that's a good question.
Well, like the reason why I ask is, Dominion owns over 800 properties. So I don't know what percentage of those each month is late. However, if I got to pay $48 per property to take a tenant into court, it has to add up.
Oh yeah, that's going to add up. That's going to be a lot of money. Yeah, we're not going to tolerate that. Like it's just not going to happen. So now we're going to be using no right of redemption on a much more regular basis. And I think ironically, the more professional landlords are going to enforce the letter of the law with a much higher level of frequency. And so there will be a period of sorting out, getting rid of the late payers out of the more professional landlords' portfolios. And ironically, like the less professional landlord will be the one who's already doing a worse job on average of tenant screening,
right,
is going to be the one inheriting all these late payers. And so I think there's going to be a bifurcation in the market between professional landlords who have tenants who pay on time and unprofessional landlords who don't really know what they're doing, who get the late payers. And you'll have a less professional experience, a less professional management experience, and you'll have the late paying tenants there. Folks will also probably gravitate from a geographical point of view, right? In the nicer locations, you'll have the professional tenants with the professional landlords with the good paying tenants. And in the lower end locations, you'll get worse housing outcomes and lower end tenants. So I think it kind of exacerbates the bifurcation in the market. And as a result, it's kind of ends up being, from an investment point of view, careful, because the good paying tenants are going to be gravitating towards better areas and more quality landlords. So like going into the lower end of the market, I think becomes even riskier a couple years down the road here. Obviously, this stuff takes time to play out.
Sure. Well, folks, if you're listening and you're a landlord, just a quick hit update on sort of what's going on around the country legislative wise in terms of squatters and evictions. Screen your tenants and visit your homes often if you can. That's the quick hit for today from Real Investor Radio. Thanks for listening.